So the length of VW is this length right here. We would label it with a little x because it's opposite the side, opposite the corner that's labeled x. This side is the hypotenuse. Now when you go to use the tangent ratio here, the only angle that we have other than the 90 that's labeled is 42. So if I write tan of 42 degrees, it will be equal to the opposite side over the adjacent side. And unfortunately, the x that we want to solve for is the hypotenuse. So I'm going to label this other side here as W because it's opposite that capital W. And put that down there. How do you solve a question where the variable is in the denominator? I mean, if the variable was on the top and the 7.2 is on the bottom, you just multiply by 7.2 and you'd be fine. But now our variable is in the denominator. Okay, some of you will be tempted to divide both sides by 7.2, but that will not give you the right answer for W. Anytime you have a fraction and you want to get rid of the fraction, you have to do the opposite. If I want to get rid of this W on the bottom, I would have to times by W. Which will give me W tan 42 is equal to 7.2. And now I don't have fractions. Now tan of 42, if we did type it into our calculator, would give us a number. And since it's less than 45, we might remember that it should be less than 1. If I wanted to get W by itself now, I just have to divide by tan of 42 on both sides. And that'll tell me what W is, 7.2 divided by tan of 42. And I get 7.996 ... Have we solved our question? No. We still need to find x, but now at least we know that W is 7.996 ... How does that help us? We can now do a squared plus b squared equals c squared. So this 7.996 squared plus 7.2 squared equals x squared. I get 115.78 ... equals x squared. Square root both sides. $10.76. How are we supposed to round it to? Nearest tenth?
Nearest 10 centimeters.
So x is equal to 10.8 centimeters. Now it says in your notes that later on, once we learn sine and cosine, that there's going to be a faster way to do this question. Okay? Because tan is the only one we know so far is always the opposite over the adjacent, tan of any angle. We're going to learn later that sine of any angle is the opposite side over the hypotenuse. We're not going to learn that yet, but if we did know that, we want to find the hypotenuse. And if I plug these things in, my 42 degrees, the opposite side we already had known was 7.2. The hypotenuse is what we wanted to find, which is x. It's very similar to what we had set up with W before. We'd have to multiply both sides by x. then we would divide by sine 42. And if you check what happens if you do this on your calculator, you get 10.8 right away. And so later on, you're going to say, doing the work in that black square is better than doing the work we did before because it's less.
Why did they only tell us that after we...
Well, they want you to get used to working with one ratio to begin with, okay? And then it's not a bad review to see how Pythagorean works. But then to see later that these other ratios just help us do it more directly. Sometimes it used to be in the curriculum that you learned all three at the same time. And you just did all three at the same time. The way that it is right now is they teach the tan first so that you really get used to the idea of one of the ratios, and then you learn the other ones later. Because there's three definitions you have to learn. Which is which over which. Tan is the opposite over adjacent. That's the one that we're working with so far.